Somewhere in America right now, a U-Haul truck is being loaded in the dark. Not because the family inside wanted to leave, not because they planned to, but because staying stopped making sense. The electricity bill doubled. The insurance company sent a non-renewal notice. The road to work developed a pothole so deep it bent an axle, and the city council announced, again, that they had no money to fix it. So they packed and they left, and they are not coming back. This is not a story about politics. It is not a story about crime statistics or red states versus blue states. Those are the stories you are supposed to believe because they are comfortable and familiar. And they keep you from asking the question that actually matters. Why are entire American cities becoming places that people physically cannot afford to stay in? That is what this video is about. And by the time it is over, you're going to look at the city you live in or the city you're thinking about moving to very differently. America has always been a country of movers. People chase opportunity, follow jobs, seek better weather. That is not new. What is new is what is driving the current migration wave, and how permanent it is beginning to look. Between 2020 and 2024, the United States saw one of the largest internal population redistribution events in modern history. Millions of people did not just move, they moved in one direction, away from specific cities and states, and toward others. And the data on where they went and, more importantly, why they left tells a story that the mainstream conversation has almost entirely gotten wrong. The popular narrative goes like this: people left high tax, high crime, Democrat-run cities for low tax, business-friendly, Republican states. That is the cable news version, and it contains a grain of truth buried inside a much larger and more uncomfortable reality. Because when you dig past the political framing and look at what people actually cited in surveys, what moving companies reported, what real estate data showed, and what infrastructure assessments confirmed, a completely different picture emerges. People are not primarily fleeing politics. They are fleeing unaffordability, physical infrastructure failure, climate-driven insurance collapse, and the slow-motion implosion of local government finances. Those forces do not care about party affiliation. They hit Democrats and Republicans equally, and they are accelerating. Here is the number that should stop you cold. According to data from the U.S. Census Bureau and multiple independent migration tracking firms, over 30 metropolitan areas in the United States experienced net population loss between 2021 and 2024. 30 metros, not 30 rural counties, 30 metropolitan areas. Places that were supposed to be the economic engines of their regions. And within those 30 metros, a pattern repeats itself so consistently, it stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like a system in failure. Let us walk through it, city by city. Chicago loses more residents than almost any other major American city, and it has for years running. The population of Cook County, which contains Chicago, has declined in 7 of the last 10 years. That is not a blip, that is a trajectory. The standard explanation is crime, and Chicago does have serious violent crime problems in specific neighborhoods. But crime does not explain why the people leaving Chicago are overwhelmingly middle-income earners, accountants, teachers, logistics workers, nurses, not just residents of high-crime zip codes. What does explain it is the financial situation of the city itself. Chicago carries somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 in combined city and state pension debt per household, among the highest per capita municipal debt loads in the developed world. That debt has to be serviced, and it is serviced through property taxes that have climbed year after year, through service cuts that affect everything from public transit to road maintenance, and through a structural inability to invest in the infrastructure that would make the city competitive for the next generation. The streets are deteriorating. The CTA, Chicago's transit system, has seen record low ridership because the trains are unreliable, the stations are unsafe, and the budget to fix either simply does not exist at the scale required. And the feedback loop has begun. As middle-income residents leave, the property tax base shrinks. As the property tax base shrinks, services decline further. As services decline, more residents leave. Chicago is not in freefall, but it is on a slope, and the slope is getting steeper. San Francisco is the most dramatic example of what happens when commercial real estate collapse and residential exodus reinforce each other simultaneously. The office vacancy rate in San Francisco's downtown hit 37% in 2024, the highest of any major American city in recorded history. For context, a healthy commercial real estate market has a vacancy rate somewhere around 8 to 10%. 37% is not a downturn. It is a structural transformation. When offices empty, the entire ecosystem built around them empties too. The lunch restaurants, the dry cleaners, the parking garages, the coffee shops, the transit ridership that funded the bus and rail lines, all of it contracts simultaneously. And as downtown empties, the property tax revenue that funded city services begins to fall. San Francisco is now facing a budget deficit measured in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and the city is being forced to make cuts in the very public services that middle-class residents depend on. Muni, the city's transit system, has already reduced service frequency. Library hours have been cut, and the city's ability to maintain basic infrastructure is visibly degrading in ways that were unimaginable a decade ago. The residents leaving San Francisco are not primarily the homeless population that dominates the media coverage. They are the $120,000 a year tech workers who found out that remote work made the rent to quality of life ratio completely untenable. And as they leave, the city loses the tax base it needs to address the very problems driving people away. Portland's population decline is one of the most rapid in the Pacific Northwest, and it illustrates a dynamic that is repeating across the country: the collapse of a city's downtown commercial core and what it does to surrounding residential neighborhoods. Portland's downtown vacancy rate reached levels comparable to San Francisco. Major retailers left, hotels closed or converted. The city's famous independent restaurant scene, once a genuine cultural draw, thinned dramatically as foot traffic evaporated. But the piece of Portland's story that gets the least attention is the insurance component. Multiple homeowners' insurance carriers began tightening or outright refusing coverage in parts of Oregon due to wildfire risk, not just in rural areas, but in suburban and semi-urban zones close enough to wildland interface areas to be flagged in actuarial models. When insurance becomes unavailable or unaffordable, it creates a cascading effect on property values and mortgage eligibility that operates completely independently of any political or social factor. A home you cannot insure is a home you cannot sell to a buyer who needs a mortgage, and a home you cannot sell is a home that has become a liability rather than an asset. Memphis presents a different version of the same problem, one driven not by the collapse of a booming economy, but by the slow suffocation of a city that never fully recovered from deindustrialization and has been living with deteriorating infrastructure for decades. Memphis has the highest property crime rate of any major American city. It has some of the worst public school outcomes. But again, when you look past the surface-level statistics at the structural drivers, a more specific story emerges. Memphis's water and sewer system is in critical condition. The city has repeatedly received notices from state environmental regulators about sewage overflows and water quality issues. Road conditions in Memphis rank among the worst in the nation by pavement quality scores. And the city's budget, constrained by a population that has been declining for over 2 decades, has no realistic path to address the infrastructure deficit without either dramatic tax increases or substantial outside intervention, neither of which appears imminent. The people leaving Memphis are not irrational. They are responding rationally to a physical environment that is becoming harder and harder to live in. Baltimore has lost more than a third of its peak population. It currently has an estimated 15,000 vacant properties, structures that are not just empty, but derelict, that create health hazards, attract criminal activity, and drag down property values for every occupied home nearby. The vacant property crisis in Baltimore is so severe that the city has an entire agency dedicated to trying to manage it. And even that agency has acknowledged that the problem is growing faster than any intervention program can address it. What makes Baltimore particularly instructive is what happened to its tax base. As population declined, property tax revenue fell. As revenue fell, services deteriorated. As services deteriorated, more residents left. The city compensated by maintaining one of the highest property tax rates in Maryland, nearly double that of surrounding counties, which means that the residents who stayed have been paying more and more for less and less, creating yet another incentive to leave. Baltimore is not beyond recovery, but it is a clear and documented example of how a shrinking city and a shrinking budget create a self-reinforcing spiral that is extremely difficult to interrupt. Detroit's story is well known in outline, but still shocking in its details. At its peak, Detroit was home to nearly 2 million people. Today, it holds fewer than 650,000. The city occupies the same geographic footprint as San Francisco, Boston, and Manhattan combined, and roughly a third of it is functionally empty. Detroit's bankruptcy in 2013 was the largest municipal bankruptcy in American history. And while the city has made real progress in its downtown and midtown cores since then, the surrounding neighborhoods remain in a condition of managed decline that the city simply does not have the resources to reverse. What Detroit represents for this conversation is the endpoint of the feedback loop. It is what happens when population loss, tax base collapse, infrastructure deterioration, and service reduction are allowed to compound over multiple decades. It is not where Chicago or Baltimore are today, but it is the direction that the dynamics driving them point toward if those dynamics are not interrupted. New Orleans is the clearest example in America of what happens when climate risk intersects with infrastructure failure and insurance collapse simultaneously. The city has not recovered its pre-Katrina population 2 decades after the storm, and rather than the risk of another catastrophic hurricane decreasing, it has increased as sea level rise and intensified storm systems make the city's below sea level geography more precarious, not less. Louisiana's home insurance market is in a state of crisis that has no clear resolution path. Multiple insurers have left the state entirely. The state-run insurer of last resort, Louisiana Citizens, is overwhelmed and underpriced relative to actual risk, and the cost of the coverage that remains available has in some areas made homeownership economically irrational. Here is the specific mechanism that matters for property values. A home in a high flood risk area of New Orleans that cannot obtain affordable private insurance becomes ineligible for a conventional mortgage. That removes the vast majority of potential buyers from the market. When your buyer pool shrinks by 90%, your property value does not decline modestly, it collapses. St. Louis has one of the most unusual administrative situations of any major American city. It is an independent city, legally separate from St. Louis County, which means it cannot draw on the county's tax base to fund city services. That structural isolation has compounded every other challenge the city faces. St. Louis has lost more than 60% of its peak population. It has one of the highest violent crime rates in America. Its school district has repeatedly lost accreditation, and the combination of these factors has created a city where the residents who have the financial means to leave do so as soon as they can, leaving behind a population increasingly concentrated in poverty and increasingly dependent on a shrinking tax base. The ripple effect of St. Louis's decline on surrounding property markets is substantial. Even in areas of St. Louis County that are genuinely thriving, proximity to the city creates perception risks that suppress property values and insurance costs for residents who have nothing to do with the city's core problems. Phoenix is the entry on this list that will surprise the most people because it is still growing in population. But it belongs here because the conditions that will reverse that growth are already in place, and the timeline for when they begin to materially affect property values is measured in years, not decades. Phoenix sits in the single most water-stressed metropolitan area of any major American city. The Colorado River, the primary water source for the region, has been in a sustained drought condition for over 2 decades. Lake Mead and Lake Powell, the 2 massive reservoirs that store Colorado River water, remain dramatically below historical capacity. Arizona has already received Tier 2 shortage notices from the federal government, which trigger mandatory water use reductions. Tier 3, the most severe, would require reductions in residential water availability that are not currently factored into any Phoenix real estate valuation. Additionally, Phoenix recorded 113 days above 100 degrees Fahrenheit in 2023, a record. The public health implications of that heat, combined with an electrical grid that has shown stress during peak summer demand, creates a livability question for Phoenix that is slowly beginning to appear in migration data. Net domestic in-migration to Phoenix, which was strongly positive through 2021, has been declining. It has not yet reversed, but the trajectory is clear. Los Angeles closes this list not because it is the most extreme case, but because it is the most consequential. The LA metro area is the second largest in the United States. When a city of that size begins to lose middle-income population at scale, the downstream effects are enormous. The January 2025 wildfires, which destroyed more than 16,000 structures in the LA area, accelerated trends that were already in motion. Insurance availability in fire risk areas of Los Angeles had been tightening for years before the fires. After them, the market effectively collapsed in some zones. State Farm had already non-renewed roughly 30,000 homeowner policies in California before the fires occurred. What the fires did was not create the insurance problem. They revealed how serious the insurance problem already was, and they demonstrated to homeowners across Los Angeles, not just in Altadena and Pacific Palisades, but across the entire metro, that their own property's insurability, and therefore its market value, rested on conditions that were less stable than they had assumed. The LA exodus is not a flood. It is a slow leak, but it is consistent. It is measurable. And the people leaving are disproportionately the working and middle-class residents whose departure degrades the economic ecosystem for those who remain. Every city on this list is caught inside the same mechanism, and it is worth naming it clearly, because understanding it changes how you read local news for the rest of your life. It works like this. Population declines. Property tax revenue falls. The city cuts services. Infrastructure degrades. Quality of life drops. More residents decide to leave, particularly those with the financial means to do so. The remaining population becomes poorer on average. The tax base shrinks further. The city raises tax rates to compensate, making it even less attractive to stay or invest. More people leave. Economists have a name for this. It is called a shrinking city spiral, and the research on how cities escape it, or fail to, is both extensive and sobering. The cities that have successfully interrupted the spiral almost universally required either a dramatic economic shock in the positive direction, such as a major employer arriving or a significant industry emerging, or massive and sustained outside investment from state or federal sources. Both of those are difficult to arrange, and neither is currently on the horizon for most of the cities on this list. What is on the horizon for all of them is the convergence of three forces that are going to intensify through 2025, 2026, and beyond. The trend of private insurers withdrawing from high-risk markets is not slowing down. It is accelerating, and the geography of what insurers consider high risk is expanding. It now includes not just Florida and California, but parts of Louisiana, Texas, the Gulf Coast broadly, and increasingly portions of the Midwest subject to tornado and severe storm risk. When private insurance withdraws, the state-run programs that replace it are almost universally more expensive, more limited in coverage, and financially fragile. Several state-backed insurance programs of last resort are themselves at risk of insolvency following major weather events. If a state insurance backstop fails, the homeowners depending on it have no safety net, and a home without accessible insurance is a home that cannot participate in the conventional mortgage market. American cities accumulated substantial debt during the low interest rate environment of the 2000s and 10s. That debt is now being refinanced at dramatically higher interest rates. For cities that were already fiscally stretched, which includes most of the cities on this list, the increased debt service cost directly crowds out spending on the infrastructure and services that determine livability. Several mid-size American cities are currently in discussions with their states about restructuring debt or accessing emergency financial assistance. The cities having those conversations quietly today will be in the news loudly within the next 2 to 3 years. Every credible climate projection shows the frequency and severity of the weather events that cause insurance losses, infrastructure damage, and displacement increasing through the end of this decade. The cities already on the losing end of this trend, New Orleans, Miami, Phoenix, parts of the Texas Gulf Coast, will face compounding costs that their municipal budgets were not designed to absorb. And here is the part that matters most for anyone thinking about real estate. These costs do not arrive evenly or on a predictable schedule. They arrive as events: a hurricane, a flood, a wildfire, an extreme heat wave that cause sudden and sometimes permanent shifts in property values, insurance availability, and population trajectory. The risk is not that things will gradually get worse in a smooth, manageable way. The risk is that things will get worse in sudden steps, and that by the time a step happens, the window to respond has already closed. None of this is meant to be paralyzing. People live full and meaningful lives in every city on this list. Neighborhoods within these cities are thriving. Businesses are succeeding. Communities are strong. But there is a difference between a city having problems and a city being caught in a structural feedback loop that its current resources cannot reverse. And one of the most expensive mistakes an American homeowner or aspiring homeowner can make right now is to confuse the two. The data on population movement is not a political statement. It is a signal. And the signal says that millions of Americans, not ideologues, not people making a point, just regular people running the math on their own lives, have concluded that the cost of staying in certain places has crossed a threshold they cannot sustain. They looked at the insurance bill, they looked at the property tax assessment, they looked at the road in front of their house and the hospital 30 miles away, and the pension-driven budget crisis their city council was not talking about at the meeting they did not attend, and they made a decision. The question this video cannot answer for you, because nobody can answer it for you, is whether the place you live or the place you are considering is on a trajectory you can afford to be part of. But the question is worth asking, with data, with clarity, and before the U-Haul trucks in your city start running short.